Hi, class. This recording is for Chapter 12 on work, leisure, and retirement. Our learning objectives for this unit are to talk about how people choose their occupations, about bias, discrimination that people face in the workplace, as well as work-family conflict, and finally to talk about leisure. So when we ask people, why do you work, most people will say it's to make a living. They need the money. But there's a lot of other reasons why we work too. We find meaning in our work, we feel good being useful, and we also like those social networks that we create with people that we work with. For many of us, our paid work will also be part of our identity. So you'll hear people say, "Hi, I'm Bob, I'm a lawyer." So it's become part of Bob's identity to be a lawyer. So developmental psychologists have then been interested in how can we predict what occupations people will choose and how much success they'll have in those occupations. So one theory is put forth by Holland, and he says that we should find a good match between our abilities and our interests. So if you have abilities and interests that lay in the artistic field, then you should try to find an occupation that uses those artistic abilities and interests. Or if you have a lot of social skills, you should look for an activity or an occupation such as social work or teaching that will fit that personality type. So you might have taken a personality quiz based on Holland's theory if you've gone for like career counseling. So many career counselors will use this and they'll put you into categories and say, based on the fact that you're an investigative social type, you should be a science teacher. So there's some ideas that this will make for a happier career. It's not perfect though. Super is another person who studied work, and he has said that we go through different stages as we progress in the workplace. So our first stage is implementation, or our first stage relevant to adulthood is implementation. He has stages before adulthood, which we've talked about in the earlier material. But in our adulthood stages, we're starting to implement our job. So in our early 20s, we're going to try out different positions and see what works for us. By the time we get to our mid-20s or so, we should be stabilizing. So we're going to make a choice. So I really like this career. I did not like this career. I'm going to stay here. And then consolidation should happen, according to Super, in our mid-30s, where we're going to start to advance up that ladder. So we've made the choice, we've been working hard for a decade or so, and we're advancing in our chosen position. Obviously, this is not the case for everyone when they choose a workplace. So I know my own mom says that she's still trying to figure out what she wants to do when she grows up. So she's done a lot of implementation, but she's never made that choice. She's still in that stabilization, and she's much older than her mid-20s, despite what she might tell you. So, it doesn't always work like this for everyone. Occupational expectations, this is something that many of us can run into, is reality shock. So you'll get trained for a certain position. So many people, I know this happened to my sister who teaches 7th grade. She had training as to what she was going to do as a 7th grade teacher. So it was all about making lesson plans and worrying about student learning outcomes and how she was going to present this material in exciting ways. And then she gets out in the real world, and what she realizes is the learning outcomes is important. That's part of what she does, but she also spends just an exorbitant amount of time trying to get these kids to sit and listen, to not, start fights with each other, to use proper words instead of cursing or saying something inappropriate. So she just spends a ton of time trying to get kids to sit down and listen. So that was a real reality shock for her. It wasn't what she was initially expecting. Mentors are something great for us in the workplace. So mentorship is beneficial for both people who are involved. So we think, obviously the person who's being mentored, the younger or less experienced individual who's getting that person of experience to explain the world to them, obviously they benefit from that experience. But even the mentor themselves benefit. So they get this feeling of being generative. So I've shared my experiences now with this person. That's that feeling of generativity. I've helped the next generation. I've done something of value. So both parties really get a lot out of mentorship. So how do we feel on our job? So hopefully we'll feel job satisfaction from our job. So when we go to work and we engage in our duties, we'll have this positive feeling from our appraisal of work. We'll say, I'm doing something good, I'm valued, I'm a person of worth in my job. But of course we know that's not always the case with our work. So we can feel negatively or have low satisfaction about our job as well. We can feel things like alienation. So our work is meaningless, it's devalued, it's not important. We're just a meaningless cog in the wheel, and we're not doing much of value. That's feeling of alienation. With burnout, we just can feel just completely devoid of energy. So someone who's burnt out, they might have a nice relaxing weekend, but then still on Monday they're exhausted. They just can't get it together and get their energy levels up. They've been burnt out. There's no more energy for that work. We see this a lot in high touch types of occupations, things where you're working with people, especially people's problems, like social work. Social workers can burn out pretty readily if they don't take care of themselves or have those institutional supports, because it is so high touch with people's problems. Obviously, we face a lot of issues in the workplace. Gender bias can be a big issue, and just gender discrimination can go for both women and men. So you can be denied a job based on your gender for many reasons. So we can think about this maybe as a man who wants to be a babysitter. He can be denied that job based on the fact that he's a male. Or a woman who wants to be a welder, she can be denied that job based on the fact that she's a female. So this gender discrimination can go both ways. Oftentimes with women, what we'll end up seeing is a glass ceiling. So women will be hired for a position, but then they won't be able to go above and beyond a certain level. So you might be able to make a mid-level manager, but then they'll never promote the woman to the optimal, the high-level manager, where she wants to go. So then she's hit this glass ceiling. She can see above it. That's why it's glass. You can see above to see what you might be able to do, but it's still that ceiling. So you can't move above it. And we also know there still is a great deal of pay inequity. So I've linked into here, and you can find recent resources about, the White House stating that women are paid less than men for the same work. Some of this has to do with women's choices in the workplace, but a lot of it does have to do with bias as well. Sexual harassment is something that people can also experience in the workplace. For sexual harassment, we really need this power differential. So one party is more powerful than the other. That's what we typically see with sexual harassment. So if you've seen the movie Horrible Bosses, which I've got a picture from here, then this boss was the boss, and she was sexually harassing an employee of hers. So she had the power, and she was using it to exploit an employee. And obviously, it can be very difficult to determine if a situation is harassment. And so what we go by is a reasonable person standard. So if a reasonable person was watching that sexual harassment or watching that episode of behavior, would they agree, yes, this is sexual harassment, or no, this is not? So we kind of rely on that reasonable person. We can also face discrimination in the workplace based on age. So age discrimination is against the law when people are above the age of 40. And so this is denying a job or denying even a promotion within that job based solely on how old someone is. So another thing with age, this is not really a discrimination, this is just more of a pattern we see with people who are older in their employment. Sometimes boomerang employees will terminate their employment and then return to work in the same organization. It's not always older individuals, but many times we will see people do this at the age of retirement. So they'll retire from their position, but then they'll come back in some part-time capacity or per diem type of capacity where they're returning to work with the same people. There can be other factors in the workplace. Career plateauing is an important one. So when you've plateaued in your career, you've gotten to the highest level that you can get without really being able to seek advancement. So that either there's no opportunity for advancement, or you're personally choosing not to seek that opportunity to advance. So you've kind of plateaued in where you're going to be in that career. So this can be a time where people feel a lot of stress. Some people are satisfied with their choice if it's an active choice, but if there's that lack of opportunity, people can feel dissatisfied with the workplace. It can lead to that alienation or to burnout. The dependent care dilemma is something that's been focused on quite a bit. It's a very difficult situation for many people who have dependents. So after many moms will have a baby, or parents will have a baby, they'll have to return to work. So most people do not have that choice, or many people won't, of being that stay-at-home parent. Many people will have to go back. A lot of this is due to money, but it's also due to the parents' attachment to their work. So parents who feel very strongly attached to their work that they want to go back are more likely to go back. So we see more moms returning when they need the money and when they're attached to their work. But we can face a lot of conflict with work and family. So with work and family, you have these demands that are just incompatible. So you have to go and work a shift on Wednesday morning, but your kid's going on a field trip on Wednesday morning. Both parties want you there, so the kid's like, please, Dad, come to the field trip. But your work's like, I'm not going to give you this day off. So it's a conflict. Which one wins out? And most of us needing our job will have to go towards the shift and not go to the field trip. But it's always that demand. And they're not compatible with each other. It's an either or choice. Most of the time we can't make it work to do both. So that's the work-family conflict that many people will experience when they have dependents. Our last topic is on leisure. So leisure activities, we do leisure activities when we're older. So after retirement, we've kind of getting close to retirement age, we'll do some leisure activities. And hopefully you don't save all your leisure for retirement. Hopefully you're doing some earlier in the lifespan as well. But what leisure is, the definition of leisure, are these activities we do just to relax and enjoy. So there's no real purpose. It's not some specific thing we have to do. Just what we do for fun, to feel good. When we're young, we often choose activities that are really, really high in intensity. We do more activities for leisure, so we might rock climb or kickbox. For middle-aged individuals, though, they often choose things that are a little less physically strenuous. So things like a nice bike ride, a walk through nature, rather than doing the rock climbing. Of course, this is not a guarantee for all people, so we can have lots of young adults who like very low physical activity and don't, they like that less physical activity or lower amounts, and they don't engage in high intensity exercise. We can have middle adults who can climb a mountain better than anyone, so it's not a guarantee, but it's just these global patterns. And that's it for our leisure. So we do see those changes in leisure across the lifespan, but that's where we'll end for this chapter 12.